We want to apply our top 10 comparative analysis skills to a wider historical perspective, and we do that this year, first with Bob Costas, and also from 1969 on, the last 50-plus years, the Divisional Era. And Bob, I love this. First of all, welcome aboard. It's great to have you on the show. And this was fun in that we did live ball era last year, 100 years. We do in the history of baseball a lot. This was fun confining it to the last two generations, the last 50 years.
You know, BK, I both love this and hate it. I love all the research that's involved, but I hate it. And as we go through the various lists over the next few weeks, think of it this way. The least great Hall of Famer, whoever that may be in your opinion, had an admirable and worthy career. There were so many people that had to be left off this list, and splitting hairs between 10 and 11 and 12, or how do I arrange them? Is 4 really better than 5 or 6? It's very, very difficult. So no disrespect meant to anybody. Plus, there's also this, not so much with relief pitchers, but the other categories. There are a lot of all-time greats who compiled most of their greatness prior to 1969. So then you got to decide, am I putting this all-time great who would maybe make the all-century team? Am I putting him on my all-divisional era team? Difficult needles to thread.
Right, and we'll discuss that. This is interesting with relief pitching, though, in that these are vastly different eras. You have the guys going 90 innings back in the day per season. Now you have the guys doing 60 innings. The ERAs are much lower, but let's just get right to it. We have to do the mixing and matching. Last 50 years, give me your top 10 relief pitchers, Bob.
Okay, there's not going to be any discussion about number 1. It's Mariano Rivera, no matter what yardstick you use. Dennis Eckersley is number 2 for me. Rollie Fingers and Goose Gossage are 3 and 4, taking into account the difference, compiling all those innings, not just 90, in some cases well into the hundreds for guys from that era. So we have that. And then Trevor Hoffman is 5th for me, Bruce Sutter 6th, Billy Wagner 7th, Craig Kimbrell 8th, Aroldis Chapman 9th, and Lee Smith 10th. And I really wish I could have found a spot for Dan Quisenberry or maybe Sparky Lyle.
Well, I did, Bob, as a matter of fact. But let me push back on Aroldis Chapman a little bit, because I struggle with him, too, because the run prevention's incredible. Over his peak, and I tried to find guys best 10 years, 12 years. For Chapman, it's really only 7 or 8. But he's averaging 59 innings a season with, and I'll use ERA, it's simpler, with a 2.10 ERA. It's a 197 ERA plus. But this is where I struggle. And I found room for, like, Craig Kimbrell. But imagine if you called Aroldis Chapman to work the 8th and the 7th the way Goose Gossage was. That ERA just wouldn't be there.
Well, that's why I elevated Fingers and Gossage above Chapman. That's why Chapman was 9th on my list. And Fingers and Gossage are right behind Rivera and Eckersley.
Yeah, I didn't find as much room. I think Trevor Hoffman, yes. Lee Smith, I'm glad you got to Lee Smith, because he just didn't quite make my list. He was, again, it could be 11th or 12th. Lee Smith is doing 90 innings a season for, a good decade with a 142 ERA plus. And again, if you're asking any of these guys these days with these incredible ERAs, and you ask them, hey, like we've seen it with Josh Hader, do another inning. Hey, do 3 innings to close out this game. That ERA isn't at 1.7 anymore. You know what I'm saying? But you found room for some of these modern guys. Bob, let me show you my list here, where I think it's pretty clear cut, too. The more studying I did, the more I was impressed with Goose Gossage. Obviously, Rivera is first. Goose Gossage, between 1974 and 85, averaged 107 innings a season with a 2.53 ERA. 107 innings a season. Rollie Fingers averaged like 114 per year. He's next. Tug McGraw, I think, is just vastly underrated. Also a big winner. And I know that's kind of an all-encompassing thing, but Bob, you know what I'm saying. He also averaged 97 innings a season for a good 12 years, a 2.87. Significant guy for championship teams, for that Mets, you got to believe, pennant-winning team. Bruce Sutter was a monster. Dan Quisenberry, I did find room for. 107 innings a season between 1980 and 87. Not the longest run, Bob, I'll admit, but a 164 ERA plus. That's a 2.49 ERA. I just think he's one of the all-time greats. And kind of mixing mixing in between the guys who did the big innings and the guys who had the long peaks. Craig Kimbrell's ERA is so absurd, it has to be there. Eckersley had a fantastic run, and he's historically significant. Trevor Hoffman had an unbelievably long and consistent run, basically 14 years of a 2.61 ERA. And yeah, Sparky Lyle, to me, his postseason, he had a 1.69 ERA, and Bob, 94 innings a season between 1968 and 1979 with a 2.61. So yeah, we're close here. But let me ask you on Lyle, how much did you struggle on Sparky Lyle? Because I was close to bumping him for Lee Smith too.
Very, very much so. I think you could defend any omission or any inclusion on either one of our lists, which is the fun of this, but also the frustration of it. I love Tug McGraw too. Part of two very historically significant teams, the Miracle Mets of '69 and the Phillies, who in '80 hadn't won the World Series since 1915, and he put the finishing touches on that. Plus, he was a wonderful character. I wish I could have included him. And speaking of characters, I think you find more characters, generally speaking, among relief pitchers than other positions.
This is my favorite part of the show, Bob, because this is where you say, I love Tug McGraw, and I'll point out he did not make your top 10. I think you like Tug McGraw, but you don't love him. I love Tug McGraw. He made my top 10. You know. That's my favorite part. How about postseason? Now, here's where I struggled again. And I hear, like, people who make this argument, Mad Dog Russo does it, with Billy Wagner. Billy Wagner is, savage run prevention through the years. Did not have a good postseason record. For me, that kept him just out of the top 10. And maybe I'm wrong, but how much did you figure that into it?
And for me, it moved him down the list from somewhere higher than 7 to 7. It's a small sample size, but it isn't good. It isn't good at all. But one thing you can say about this, no matter what criteria you apply, Mariano Rivera by acclamation is number one. There's no dispute about who's number one. The disputes are 2 through 10.
Oh, no question. Yeah, see, we don't have to discuss Mariano Rivera at the very top. But interesting, in that, Dennis Eckersley, historical figure, no question, transformed the position. But I think Goose Gossage is solidly in at number 2. Interesting stuff. Bob, I enjoyed it. We'll do it again. Thank you so much.
Okay, BK.